Okay, we got us recorded. Good afternoon and welcome. We are so glad you can join us today for our coffee chat. We are focused on undergraduate research opportunities for students. So I know that when we hear research, we sometimes will picture maybe something a little bit different. So maybe students in lab coats or doctoral dissertations. But one of the things that really makes the University of Arizona distinctive is that research is not just for graduate students. It's an integral part of undergraduate experience here at the University of Arizona. So really across disciplines, across majors, from STEM, of course, to health sciences, to business, social sciences, humanities. Our undergraduate students really have the opportunity to work alongside our faculty and mentors. They do hands-on projects, and these experiences for students really help them to explore their interests more deeply, apply what they're learning in the classroom, and develop those critical thinking skills that are valuable to their future career path. So today's conversation is really designed, especially for you as parents and supporters. We know that you play an important role in supporting and encouraging your students. So we just want to help you understand what undergraduate research really looks like, how students can get started, and really how early they can participate. So those of us on this webinar today just want you to know that each individual college uh, everything is different throughout campus. So all the colleges can be a little bit different on the different types of experience that they offer to students. And so though our presenters today may not know specifically each of the majors, because it really just kind of depends throughout the session, just know that it depends ultimately, on your student, on the major, on the college. So throughout the session, please feel free to submit your general questions through the Q&A. But I will start out with just some quick logistics. We're in a webinar format. Your audio and visual have been disabled. Your chat box is also disabled, but you can hover over the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and ask any questions that you have for us. This session will be recorded and put on our website, futurefamily.arizona.edu. And I just want to give a huge shout out to my colleagues behind the scenes who will assist with answering all of our questions here in the Q&A. So thank you again for being here and partnering with us as we help our Wildcats discover and explore. So without further delay, I am excited to introduce you to Robert Steffen. He is the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs at the W.A. Franke Honors College and Associate Professor of Practice in Classics. We also have another presenter today who is Tori Nardinelli. She is the Assistant Director of Research, Creative Expression, and Professional Initiatives. Tori and Robert, I appreciate you taking the time to join us this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for the invite, Renee. Super excited to be here. I'm Rob Steffen. I'm the Associate Dean for Academics over in the Honors College. But my disciplinary background is in classics. And if there's any confusion about what that is, it's essentially a fancy name for ancient Greek and Roman studies. So I like to really dig into the past. We'll talk a little bit about what research looks like more broadly in a few minutes. And then I'll give you kind of I don't know, a snapshot or an insight into specifically what that is in my field and how some of the lessons that I've learned there, I think are going to be applicable to students in a wide variety of disciplines and majors across the college here. So you might have to bear with me as we go through the end of the Bronze Age, but I promise I'll try to make it short and interesting, and hopefully give you some good nuggets that you guys can take with you into your own academic journey once you start here at the U of A.
Hi, folks. I'm Tori. So grateful to be here today, and thank you to Renee for inviting me. I'm a lifelong Wildcat, came here my freshman year and never left. And I really enjoy working in undergraduate research spaces. It's such an exciting place to be on campus, and really happy to be here chatting with all of you today.
Thank you both. Let's go ahead and get started, jump right into this undergraduate research. Tori, and I'll start with you. So, when we say research at the undergraduate level, what does that actually look like for first year students, maybe even second year students as they're starting out?
I really love this question because I think there are a lot of misconceptions that come up when people think about what undergraduate research looks like. There might even be the misconception that undergraduate or the research isn't for undergraduate students, right? It might be for graduate students or faculty. And I really appreciate that at the University of Arizona, we not only want students to get involved when they're undergrads, but we also want them to get involved really early. So you might be thinking, oh, maybe it makes sense for a student to wait until, they're more established in their major, maybe around their junior, senior years when they can really dig in. And at the U of A, we really value that early experience as well. So students as early as their very first and second semester can jump in and get started on projects. We also have such an incredible array of research mentors available across campus in lots of different fields. And I know Rob is planning to talk about that a little bit later too. So while some of it is going to be what you probably think of with the lab coats and the test tubes and the pipetting, there's tons of different ways for students to get involved. So in any discipline, there can be things that are very practical, or maybe doing some community-based work, or analyzing data, conducting surveys. Research can look a lot of different ways. And often for those first and second year students, it's early experiences are taking time to connect with faculty, maybe a class that you're taking that you really enjoy working with that professor, or maybe you're just really driven by another topic and you find a professor that's working on projects related to that. It's often connecting with those research mentors, sharing that enthusiasm, and typically you're going to start by joining an ongoing project. And that's where you really get to learn, what does this discipline look like? What does research look like for this particular type of project? And then what I find really exciting is that when students take that step early, that means they have that time to kind of build their skill set, and then they end up often designing and leading their own projects later in their academic careers. And it's really, really wonderful to see that come full circle.
Thank you, Tori. You brought something up that was very interesting. And Rob, I'm looking at you. So, research Tori mentioned is not only for STEM majors. So, are there opportunities? Help us kind of understand outside of STEM, some of the research.
For sure. This question kind of, I don't know, hits home for me. As a classics major myself, that usually falls in the humanities or the social sciences. And so, like Tori mentioned, right? Like, of course, the STEM majors have the lab experiments, the clinical research, that sort of thing. But I think literally every discipline we have here, there is some way for a student to get involved creating something new, right? And frequently, like, I think that's almost even a better way, like a better synonym to use than even like research. It's like the search for something new, some new knowledge out there. And whether you're reading Homer from 2,800 years ago, or you're conducting a psychology experiment, or you are dealing with petri dishes, those are all ways that we can learn new things about the world. And so when I was going through my own undergraduate education, the first step was essentially going up to my professor I was at a big public university as well. And in the big lecture hall, going up after class and saying, that was so cool. Like it really was. Like she had the ability to just capture anybody's attention. And she was like, "Oh, Rob, that's great. Come by office hours sometime." And so I did. And we chatted and she was asking the types of things I'm interested in. And sure enough, I was like, "Oh, I can read these stories about the past, but like, what kind of new thing can I do?" And she was like, "Oh, well, why don't you go check out special collections, right?" And like 3 weeks later, I was in like the depths of the library. Like after you go into the vaulted space where they control all like the temperature and the humidity and stuff like that. And we're like shuffling through like what actually they kind of look like old shoe boxes. I mean, I think they're more technologically sound than that, but like of ancient papyrus. And so that's like the paper from the ancient Greek and Roman and Egyptian world. And that was my first foray into research was working with my professor at the time to start deciphering those. and then start building a picture of what kind of daily life was like in the ancient like Roman Egyptian world. So it was like letters from a dad to his son, and we were translating those. And so that was something, at least for me, I don't know, a couple of years before college. I don't think that would have crossed my mind as falling under the category of research. But as I reflect on it, like it certainly was, right? You're coming up with something new to say about the way the world works, past, present, and future. And so you can see here on the slide, right? These are some of the different ways that you can get involved in some of the different disciplines across campus. In the humanities, that might be archival research. That's what we'd call what I was just talking about there. It could be taking what we know about the ancient world and building digital models for the public, digital humanities. In business and economics, right, you might be dealing with large quantitative data sets and sending them through databases and spreadsheets and calculating regressions and predicting future behavior off of those. Or in a psychology experiment, right, you might be actually working with people where you want to test how lack of sleep affects performance on midterm exams or something along those lines. But all of that research happens here at the U of A. And this is just something, I've been a professor here for a decade plus. Every first class, every time, my pitch is I don't care whether you're an archaeologist or a classicist or a psychologist or a dance major or a physicist or whatever, right? Find some way to get involved. This is like the thing that is going to be kind of transformative at the university, where you move from sort of learning about the world, right? Kind of in a textbook style way, to like it is now your job to start producing new knowledge about the world. And whether that's in the field or in the lab, it is a very, very cool thing to be a part of. So if you can go to the next slide here, what I wanted to talk about, give me like 2 or 3 minutes here, is a little bit about what that work looks like in my own research. And so within the field of classics, right, within Greco-Roman studies, I'm an archaeologist. And what that means is I study essentially the junk, right, the stuff of the ancient world, and try to use these little fragments to put together a picture of what life would have been. Um, and that gives us a really important insight into the past because when we just look at the texts, right, when we read the Iliad or the Odyssey or the Aeneid or something like that, we're kind of getting the texts from the very upper echelons of civilization. And when we get into the stuff, we can kind of see the things that everybody, right, the regular people of the ancient world had and build a picture about what life was like. Now, so I work in Greece. This is a little town called Porto Rafti. It's about an hour southeast of Athens when you hit the coast. And there we are conducting what we call an archaeological survey. And if you can go to the next slide, I want to start with kind of some backstory here. And this is one of the things that I think is common to essentially, I'm not going to say all, but the vast majority of research, regardless of discipline. And that's that it begins with a question. Okay. So there's something that we don't know that we want to find the answer to. And in my case, what I was interested in is this very particular period of time called the end of the Bronze Age. And if you think Bronze Age, you're thinking ancient Egypt and the Mesopotamian empires and the Minoans and the Mycenaeans. And so these very kind of the dawn of the very large civilizations of the ancient Mediterranean and Near East. And right around the same time, right around 1200 BC, they all disappear. They are all essentially burned to the ground. And what I was interested in is essentially the next 50 years. What happens when these large civilizations disappear? And so the question I was going in with was that we had this cemetery. You can see the remains from the cemetery in the bottom right-hand corner there. So we have this cemetery from this exact period, but we don't know where the people were living. And so that's what I was trying to figure out. That was my question. Where are people living in the aftermath of this societal collapse? So if you go to the next page, after we begin with a question, we move on to employ a method, right? So those methods are very different in the lab sciences versus the social sciences versus the humanities. but they all have some way of trying to answer that question. And in this case, I was doing what we call archaeological survey. And so what that is essentially looking at the remains of the past without digging holes in the ground. So we'll say, I don't know, over the past century or two, archaeologists may have gotten a reputation for digging holes in the ground, taking stuff, and then taking it back to their own museums in London and New York and all over the world. And so now we're trying less invasive ways of understanding the past. And so this is going around to different places, seeing what's on the surface, and then building profiles of how we think that indicates what's underneath. And you can see some of the pictures of the way that looks here, right? So we'd take a boat out to some of the different islands in the bay. You can see a pile in the bottom left there of some of the pottery that we're finding. That's all just from the surface. And then we analyze that. We wash it up and we analyze it in the lab. And if we go to the next picture, we can see the data that we've produced. So again, this is all from the surface, but we see a lot of different things. We see that painted pottery. That's like drinking vessels. People really enjoyed their wine in the ancient Greek world. In the bottom center, we see little figurines, right? So we know there was religious activity. In the bottom right, those are cooking vessels, right? So people are making food wherever this is. And in the top right, that's actually ceramics that went into a kiln and then fell to the ground and broke and just got way over fired. And that's why it looks all like off color and lumpy. But what this means is that we get every facet of daily life, right? We get the eating, we get the drinking, we get the religious worship, we get storage, we get pottery production. And so this kind of combination of things only happened in one place. And if you go to the next slide, out of the entirety of this bay that we were working on, the only place where we're getting all those things is this one island that you can see right there. And so we think that's where the settlement was that produced that cemetery that stands as the best evidence for this one very interesting period of time. So the next steps in the research, we're getting funding right now, we're putting it into permits. So the next kind of step will be to actually go excavate that. And that'll happen over the next, we'll say, next year of permitting and then probably the next 5 years of actual excavation. So that's a little insight into what I do. That's just one little subset of what research actually looks like. But again, very different than being in a lab and yet new original ideas and data and research nonetheless. So I know that was a little long-winded. Let's go ahead and skip the video on the next page for right now. And if we have time at the end, we can come back to that. So you might need to go one more if you can there.
Sorry about that. Rob, that was so interesting. Thank you for sharing your work. That is so important for us to see really hands-on. Thank you for sharing that.
Of
It was
course. Yeah, yeah.
impressive.
It's it's fun to do. It's fun to talk about.
Yeah, I can tell you very much enjoy it. That was fantastic. Rob, I have a question for you. So you showed us some beautiful work that you and your team did there, but why is undergraduate research such a priority here at the University of Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, I think about that. I think on a couple levels. One is like, in addition to preparing students for a particular job, right, we're preparing them to succeed in the world. And when you get into the world of research, right, what you're really doing is teaching students to think about how to solve problems, right? The whole idea goes back to a question that we don't know the answer to, and you have to be creative and methodical to kind of get to that answer. And so doing undergraduate research is a great way to move from like memorizing facts in a textbook to coming up with your own way to solve problems about the world. In doing so, I think the other thing is that but like I mentioned earlier, right? Like college is the time when students move from essentially like kind of learning about the world to contributing something new to it, right? This is when in my field, right, it's not just learning facts about what year Julius Caesar was assassinated, right? It's trying to answer questions about how inequality impacted the development of the Roman Empire. And those types of questions happen in a lot of different spaces. And so, it's really a new time of knowledge creation. And then finally, and here's like the selfish one from the university, is that our students are super smart, right? So like one of the reasons it's a big priority for us is because they have a lot to contribute in the lab or wherever that research is being conducted. And so we absolutely want to work with students, right? We want to collaborate with students so that we can kind of pool our collective knowledge to go produce new things about the world and to really elevate the U of A within it.
Thank you, Rob. I am seeing some really good questions in the chat. Um, Tori, I'm going to ask you this question just because I kind of see it come up a little bit. Um, what kinds of skills can our students gain through research?
I will try to not be too long-winded on this one because I think the answer to that question is so many and it's kind of an endless list. But some of the ones that come to mind are really communication, which I think is one that maybe wouldn't be top of some people's list, but it's really great experience for students to have that practice communicating with their faculty mentors. Sometimes that can be a little intimidating, but our faculty, as you see with Rob, incredibly kind, wonderful to work with, and I think it's really wonderful to give students that confidence boost of being able to explore those conversations and explore their curiosities in that way. And as they start working on projects, they're working within teams often, depending on how the project they're working on is structured. They might be working with graduate students or fellow undergrad researchers. And so being able to practice all of those communication skills to work on a complex project amongst others is really valuable skill sets that can be transferred to any life skill, really. Um, and it's also really exciting to see them learn how to communicate, right? Because these projects are often very complex in nature. And so figuring out, oh, the way I talk about this project with my faculty mentor, very different than when my parents ask, "What's your research about?" Right? Or when grandma asks, "What's your research about?" You have to kind of figure out how do I hone all of this knowledge into, the right audience and who I'm talking to. And that's such a valuable skill to learn that again can be used in a variety of academic and eventually, workspaces. Beyond that, they're obviously going to be learning a lot of technical skills. So depending on what methods they're using, they're going to be learning maybe software or how to, field protocol or how to do experimental protocol. If they're in clinical spaces, working with patients and people, and actually being able to do those hands-on skills and learn all of those things is such a valuable piece. I mentioned confidence already, but just overall, you can see these students really grow. And, when they're first talking about their projects and they're first getting started, they're a little timid often. And then just to see them after a semester or two, how much they just kind of explode in this confidence of who they are as a scholar, and seeing themselves yeah, as Rob mentioned, that, really valuable contributor to knowledge. It's really, it's one of the most, it's a really wonderful thing to witness. Um, and another thing I'll mention is it's often an opportunity for students to start learning leadership and mentorship, especially when they get involved early. They might be with a project long term, so they might be starting as kind of that early trainee. And as they gain more experience, they might be training new undergraduate researchers that come in. And so to be able to kind of experience that moving up in responsibility and gaining that knowledge and experience and learning how do I disseminate that and kind of have that develop that leadership? Again, just really, really powerful experiences.
Those, especially the hands-on skills, you mentioned the confidence, but it's not unheard of. I've met so many students who start their first year, and as they're about to graduate, they're still working with the same professor doing, yep. So thank you for that, Tori. So I'm thinking, for our families who are, thinking about their students, how does research experience impact graduate school, medical school, or their job applications? How does that impact the research that they do? Rob, can you answer that for us?
Sure. So I actually served as like the faculty advisor for the classics program here at the U of A for about 8 years. And I would say 50 to 60% of our classics majors are like double majors in something like physiology that want to go on to med school, right? And so we were frequently getting that kind of question, right? How is it that this other opportunity, right, that may not seem directly related at first can positively contribute to that student's goals? Um, and I really had to think deeply about that and how to verbalize it. And I think there's a couple things, right? One, when you finish here, if your goal is to go to you know law school or business school or medical school, right? These are competitive programs to get into. And if you want to go to medical school, right, everybody's going to have their, physiology degree, or their, biology degree or cellular biology or whatever. Like that is a prerequisite. You got to have that to get in the door. But then somehow you also have to separate yourself out from like the stack of applications that's that high, right? And if you can intelligently talk about not just what you learned in the classroom, but something new that you're doing within that field or in another field, um, I think that really makes you stand out against other applicants for those very competitive positions. I think the other thing that it does is it gives you like examples to back up what you're talking about. Okay. And what I mean by that is like when you say you're a good problem solver, right? Or that you think critically, or that you're good analyzing data, right? These are all things that graduate programs or med schools would be interested in, or industry jobs as well, right? You now can't just, you don't have to just say that and say, I'm great analyzing data. You have a very specific story to tell that demonstrates how you've analyzed data and what the data was like and what interpretations you put it through to get a result at the end. And being able to do that in a way where you're kind of telling a specific story about your journey, but told through um, a concrete example, I think is something that really will set you apart at the next level. And then finally, right? Like it doesn't matter whether you're going into graduate school, into industry, whatever it is, right? People want people who are problem solvers, right? Those companies, those schools want people who can take something that we don't know or something that is challenging and come up with an answer. And at least the way that I would talk about that when I was in classics is that if you can describe how you're answering a question about people who lived 2,000 years ago, halfway across the world, when we have little fragments of pottery and scraps of papyrus, right? You are going to look super cool to somebody who's trying to understand, how do we assess this patient and take these kind of fragmentary cues or descriptions of what's going on with them, and then kind of interpolate that into an answer about a diagnosis, right? So even these things are just wildly different. Actually, that process of kind of taking evidence, building a model out of it and reaching a conclusion, that's something that kind of transcends an individual discipline. And I think is really powerful in regardless of whatever field you end up in.
Thank you for that, Rob. You both in the start of our webinar here, you kind of touched on if a student was really interested in something, they can kind of talk to that professor and see about doing any kind of research. But I wondered, are there structured programs that connect students with research mentors?
Yes, this is a great question, Renee. And one, I mean, as you mentioned too at the top, that every department is different, every college functions differently. So the good news is there are many, many people that are excited and enthusiastic to help students figure this out. So I have a few here on the slides. One of the major ones I really like to highlight are the undergraduate research ambassadors. They've put together this phenomenal website that gives students some tools and resources to figure out how do I find faculty who are interested in the things that I'm interested in? What do I say to them when I'm ready to reach out to them? They even have the ambassadors themselves, they're undergraduate students who are very highly engaged in undergraduate research, and they are willing to meet with students one-on-one as sort of a concierge service. So wherever that student is at in their process, they can meet with a student who can help them figure out those next steps. Similarly, across campus in every college and department, there are going to be staff and faculty. In the Honors College, I'm one of those staff, and I have another team member as well. So as I mentioned, tons and tons of people, advisors, lots of folks who are enthusiastic about helping our students figure this out. And we also offer a ton of different types of research opportunities across campus. So we've talked a lot about kind of what I think, typically we'll think about with those faculty mentored research opportunities, but the University of Arizona also offers a lot of course-based undergraduate research experiences, or they're called CURES. And so some of our courses will be tagged and they will literally embed the research process into a course. So I think our biology classes are currently doing that. And there's several other options across campus. So that really helps make those opportunities more accessible and kind of scale up to allow even more students to participate. And there's lots of different ways so students can work individually or amongst teams. And so again, there's kind of endless possibilities for students to find a research space that feels good, fits their goals, their needs, and helps them kind of develop those skills for the next steps. I've listed a few of the dedicated research programs that exist across campus, just so you can hear of them and kind of recognize their name. But first, some of them are vertically integrated projects. And so these are faculty from all across campus and many different disciplines that are actively seeking researchers. And they have a centralized application process. So a student who's interested can apply and say, here's, I'm a checkbox and say I'm interested in these topics or these specific programs within VIP. They do have some federal work studies supported paid positions within VIP, and that's a really great place for students to first get started. Similarly, there's the undergraduate research or biology research programs, lovingly referred to as UBURP. And this is a program that has been on campus for like more than 30 years, I believe. Really well established. It is based out of the College of Science, but they have a very wide definition of biology. So that could be plants or people or many other things. And they're a really great program for students to get involved with. They help students find mentors, and we'll do some of those matches as well. There's also a number of programs under the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Consortium, or UROC as we lovingly call it. And again, this is another one of those programs where students can apply and then help be matched to mentors and programs depending on their interests. And sometimes you can apply with a mentor, which is also nice. And of course, at the University of Arizona, we do a lot of really great space research. So there's the Arizona Space Grant that's funded by NASA. And I've had incredible conversations with the folks who lead that program. It's definitely open to folks outside of the sciences too. They talk a lot about the need for like science communicators, so folks in the humanities and social sciences who have really strong writing skills to be able to help with the communication side of things. So it's not just for STEM students. None of these are only STEM students. They're really open to a wide variety. But that's just a sampling of some of the programs that exist on campus. And again, there are just countless people. So really encourage students to make those connections with folks across campus and don't be afraid to ask for help. And then for the next slide, Rob and I are from the Honors College, so I would be remiss to not mention the Franke Honors specific programming that we offer. As I mentioned, we have dedicated staff. I'm one of those staff members, and I have a teammate as well. We meet regularly with students. We also partner with the Undergraduate Research Ambassadors and have our own URA that's embedded in the Franke Honors College to provide that one-on-one support to students. We have a really incredible faculty and they have very extensive networks. So you can talk to our faculty here too, and they can introduce you to friends of theirs, and it's really great way to make those connections. We do a
Yeah,
lot to
just
make.
on the, oh, sorry, just on the, I just want to get in on the Honors College front too. Even for those students who aren't necessarily coming into the Honors College right away, we've got pipelines for once you show up, you're eligible to join if you meet a few criteria that are relatively basic. And it's very much for people who are interested in getting involved in undergraduate research. We've got funding to do so. We've got the staff to support it. Everybody who graduates with honors completes a thesis, which at its core is undergraduate research. And so if it's something that you're genuinely interested in, seriously consider it, even if you're not already involved. And you can shoot me an email, you can shoot Tori an email. We're happy to point you in the right direction for what the next steps are on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Great information. So Eddie has a question. It's a question here in the chat, and I just want to make sure that it's clear for him. He asks, are research opportunities limited to students in the Honors College? You kind of touched it on already, but can you just kind of restate and help answer that?
Yeah, I think I'll let Tori tackle this one because she'll have a better understanding of it. The short answer is no, that it's one of the things that we strongly focus on. But these opportunities are open to people across the entire university.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm plugged in with the network. So I work in the Frankie Honors College, but I'm on committees across campus that are really dedicated to improving access and really making sure that this is available to any student who's interested. So definitely not dedicated to just honor students.
Thank you for that. And thank you for your question, Eddie. So I just want to do a couple of the slides if you've, joined any of our coffee chats, I just want to let you know that we do have some future coffee chats coming up in the near future. Financial aid, do you have questions for our financial aid office? We'll have the experts on for all of these topics here. Next steps in orientation, we'll continue that conversation. Housing, meal plans, fraternity, sorority programs. Do you have questions for them? Please join us. All these topics are open and available to you as parents and family members. Just want to make sure that you are aware of the resources we offer here on campus. You should know that we are hosting Admitted Student Day for students who are admitted, newly coming for fall 2026. Students can sign up in their Next Step Center, or they can go to this website that's listed here at the top of the screen. They'll log in with their net ID and password, and they can choose any of the dates. So next Friday, February 27th is the first one, March 20th, and April 11th. So if you've come for a tour, you probably had about an hour and a half to 2 hours of, getting a quick presentation and a tour of campus. Admitted Student Day is a little bit different. There are tours that are offered, but there's tons of Wildcat spirit. Your student will be talking to their college. They'll learn more information about their academic sessions. If you are able to make any of the Admitted Student Day events, we would love to have you, especially if you haven't toured yet already. This will be a great event to come to. And then save the date for Family Quest. That will be the week prior to the start of school. The first day of school is Monday, August 24th. So these events will happen for you as parents and supporters while your student is at Destination Arizona, which we'll talk about here in the near future. We will have events for you as well. Um, in closing, Tori, Rob, you have been wonderful. What would you like to say to a family who thinks, my student isn't a researcher? Do you have any advice for them?
I sure I'll get in on that one. Let me think for a second here. I think I would say, okay, if let's say this is the parents looking at their students thinking, my student's not a researcher. All right, if your kid ever went through that phase where they just asked you why about everything, right? Like, eat your vegetables, why? Like, go to school, why? Right? They have the key, like the cornerstone to being a researcher, right? That is the essence of what we do is we're answering that question of why things occur. And so as they got older, right, if they're asking more sophisticated questions like, why can't I stay out with my friends all night? And then all of a sudden, in addition to the question, they've got data to show why they should be able to stay out with their friends all night. They are now knee deep in research where they are producing evidence to support their arguments. And so, like, I guess my answer would be, hey, your kid is probably already doing it. And if we can, once they find their passion here at the U of A, channel that towards, questions that are, not just about oneself, but about the world and about how to make it a better place. I think it's something that's extremely fulfilling on a personal level and something that's just genuinely good for the world. So I think that's what I would say.
Thank you for that. That was great. And Tori, in closing, is there something distinctive at the University of Arizona that just really makes the University of Arizona so grand with undergraduate research?
Absolutely. I mentioned before, I'm connected to a network of folks across campus who are dedicated to increasing access to undergraduate research and really kind of breaking through those stigmas and assumptions of what a researcher is or should be. And I would say that it's really exciting to see that momentum. And that is something that is really distinctive. We've got a great array of projects that students can get involved with and ways that they can get involved. And it's only going to get better from here. We have some really exciting things that I think are on the horizon and some really great capital campaign funds to help make that happen. And so I'm already really proud of what we have to offer. And I know it's going to get even better from here.
I think this is a great way to end our session today. Rob, Tori, you have been fantastic. So much information. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It was a blast.
It was
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Parents and families, this concludes our session. I will hang out for a few more minutes. If you have any last minute questions, our team will be behind the scenes, just getting those questions answered for you. Appreciate your time and listening in today, and we'll hopefully see you for the next coffee chat. Thank you, everyone. And that looks like all the questions in the Q&A are answered. So I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you again.